couple of our members who learned this week that their family will be coming. Congratulations. We're very, very pleased. Have you any more word, or you're still preliminary as to when they're expected? Okay, so November. All right. Very good. Well, that's wonderful news. And anything else for our prayer list this morning? Jimmy Wong, you said. Okay. Anything else? Absolutely. I'll be passing around a list. Remember, I said that for those of you here, we have a list that is up here of those who are former members and people that lived in the area that some of you were contacting. If you've heard anything from any of those folks, I hope that you'll update the list. But this one is for our people that are here regularly. I just ask you to put the family name and the number of folks you expect to be here. So once again, the reason, of course, is that we want to make sure that we have sufficient food. So we'll pass this around during class, and then I'll post it on the board. Thank you very much. Okay. Lindy, would you like to open for prayer for us? Amen. Thank you. I should have mentioned, too, that on Friday we received news that one of Paula's cousins in Evansville, Indiana, passed away very suddenly in the middle of the night. And it's not known yet what the cause was, but we hope to travel to the funeral when the arrangements are made. There are 5 sisters that are Paula's cousins down there. This is the middle of the one in the middle of the 5. So that's always a difficult please remember their their maiden name was Ice, and not a popular word these days, but that keep them in mind, please. Laura, her last name again? Laura Beck was the one who passed away. All right, we're finishing up today our final lesson, and it's called Final Matters, 1 Corinthians chapter 16. I don't know, magic, I guess. How can 1 Corinthians 16, 1 and 2? Oh, yeah, I didn't turn it on. Oh, oh, I see. Oh, that. How can 1 Corinthians 16, 1 and 2 be used to demonstrate that there is a pattern for a congregation to follow regarding giving? How can congregations learn about financial propriety from 1 Corinthians 16, 1 through 4? What can we do to help one another be vigilant, courageous, and more dedicated to the cause of Christ? And why should love be a motivating factor? We went through the introduction, comparing the first part of 1 Corinthians with the last chapter, and saw the various parts of letters that were written in those days. We began the first part of the lesson on giving. And there we go. And that passage, 1 Corinthians 16, 1 through 4. Someone would refresh our memories, please, reading that. Right, thank you very much. And then the second part of the lesson was entitled Paul's Plans. And we were just beginning with that. 1 Corinthians 16, 5 through 9. All right, thank you very much. So, Paul is making plans now, and here is a map that illustrates what kinds of plans he's making. Initially, what does he say he wants to do? Okay, so Macedonia, of course, is the large area up here. Around the top of the map here. And he says that he is like wanting to pass through Macedonia. He probably wishes to visit the congregations he's established up here at Philippi, Thessalonica, and Berea. Those are all congregations that we're familiar with from the New Testament. Foundation's 1 Corinthians suggests that he indicates that rather than just a passing visit, as it says there, he wants to spend some time in Corinth, maybe even as long as over the winter. He's counting on the Corinthians to provide support, as Drew mentioned, for his journey and for people in Jerusalem. Nevertheless, he acknowledges that he's got his proposed plans, but whatever happens is contingent on the Lord's will. So, Paul made plans rooted in his desire to see the Corinthians and to remain with them. But he always depended on God to lead him in the direction he was to go, regardless of his desire. His intention to stay in Ephesus beyond Pentecost, his intention was to stay in Ephesus beyond Pentecost because of the great opportunity that for the advancement of the church that had occurred there. However, all right. So Ephesus, of course, you remember, is here across from Corinth. So there were great opportunities here in Ephesus, and he wanted to stay there for a time and continue to work. However, if we look in Acts chapter 19, we find that his plans were greatly altered. Can anybody quickly tell us what happened in Acts chapter 19? Or what's described happening there? Okay, so remember we said that Paul has said that there are great opportunities here. In fact, the opportunities were so great before the passage that was read there. Um, there were many people who had practiced divination, and mysticism, and they were so um, convinced by the teaching of Paul that they burned all their scrolls. Of course, they had been worshiping Diana, or Artemis, as she's also called in some of the versions that you have. Um, and so that's what led up to what was just read in your hearing there so eloquently. Thank you very much. Let's take a look and dissect what's going on here. Really, what it is, of course, is an anatomy of a disaster, the riot in Ephesus. So, verses 24 through 27, what's happening there? Yeah, exactly. So we've got a group with special interests, right? They're affected by the circumstances. And so a radical leader, Demetrius, appears and he uses inflammatory what ifs. Drew, Juhu, Drew. So he uses inflammatory what ifs to attack those that he accuses as the source of the trouble. He chooses a scapegoat, and the scapegoat is Paul. He makes him and his followers the target of rage. So notice how Demetrius builds this hysteria by predicting possible outcomes. What does he suggest might happen? Okay, we might lose our business. What else? The temple might be discredited. Okay? So these are things that he's saying. These things can happen. There's no indication that they are going to, except for the losing business part, I guess. But he builds up this hysteria. And Diana, or Artemis, will be robbed of her divine majesty. So verses 28 and 29, what's happening here? And more than just shout, they seized Gaius and Aristarchus, and what did they do with them? They dragged them into the theater. All right. Verses 32 through 34, what's happening there? Yes. And what does it say about the knowledge of the people that are involved in this? Yeah. Most of them didn't even know why they were there. Okay? Mass hysteria occurs because they're being stirred up by this radical group. And the Jews there want to have a spokesman, and the spokesman's name is, okay. And as soon as Alexander opens his mouth and they realize he's a Jew, yes, okay, for 2 hours. For 2 hours. Can you imagine that? Yes, exactly. Um, so, verses 35 through 40. Well, I didn't ask specifically for it to be read, just a précis of what happened there. So that's a good start. So he's told them, you better calm down because, right. And if the if people if the word of this commotion gets out, what can happen? Okay, remember that this is Ephesus, and it is a colony of Rome, and the Romans left them alone pretty well, but they're not going to leave them alone if they have this kind of nonsense going on. And so, fortunately, what was the result? All right. He said you can take legal action if they've done anything wrong. You can take legal action, and he dismissed the assembly. And fortunately, um, they obeyed. But things didn't go back to normal, of course. Um, what did Paul's companions um, advise him to do? Well, we can we can take a look at Acts chapter 20, verses 1 through 6 and 13 through 16. Excuse me. Before we do that, what did Paul's friends advise him to do? Sorry? Don't go into the crowd. Go away. Stay away. And so, what did he decide to do instead in this passage? Yes. Could you be a little more explicit? All right. So would you read that for us, Gary, please? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. So, yeah. The third journey was, yeah, but what was his third journey? To Rome. To Rome. So this is the second. Yeah. Okay. So here's the map again. So we see that first of all, it says that they were going to set sail for Syria, and of course, Syria is down at the other end of the Mediterranean Sea. But as they were about to do so, they found out that Paul was in danger. So he went then back through Macedonia. I've got to go over here to get the arrow where I want it. So it says that the men that are mentioned there went on ahead to Derbe, and then they were set sail for Troas. And you see that here is Troas on the map over here. So they set sail. Paul went and met them there. Sorry, not Derby. That's where I got it. Then they okay. Well, the next part is what I wanted to point out here on the map. So someone read verses 13 through 16, please. So here we have Troas, and so they sailed down from Troas to Assos, and then to Mytilene, and then to Chios, and from there they arrived at Miletus down here. So notice that Miletus is here, Chios is here, and Ephesus is in between. So he didn't stop there because it would delay him, and he wanted to get from Miletus to Jerusalem if he possibly could by the time of Pentecost. Remember, these ships, of course, depended on what mode of energy for travel. Okay, so therefore, sometimes they could travel fairly quickly. Other times they could not. And so, you couldn't go like we do today and check the ship sailing times if you're going on a cruise. or go and buy an airline ticket uh, and plan to move to places in certain lengths of time. It could take a short time. It could take a long time. So I don't know how they worked things in those days. It must have been a very difficult thing to be a person selling tickets for ships because when will we get there? I don't know. When the wind blows, you'll get there. All right. So we can see that Paul needed to be flexible with regard to his plans, and he definitely acted as James advised in James chapter 4, verses 13 through 16. Someone would read that for us. All right, thank you very much. Okay, any questions or comments on this section, the plans that Paul made and the alterations that had to occur to his plans? Let's move on then. The next section, others. Someone would read for us, please. 1 Corinthians 16, 10 through 14. All right, I'm sorry. Okay, so Paul's hopes and plans also included his fellow workers. In verse 10, he returns to thinking about his young protege, Timothy. What request does he make of the Corinthians regarding Timothy? Yes, but he also says something else. Paula asked what lesson we were going to be doing, and when she read that, she asked this question. Yeah. Now, why do you think that Paul felt it necessary to write, see that Timothy has nothing to fear? Think about that for about 20 seconds, and then turn to your neighbor and suggest possibilities. Okay, why do you think that Paul found it necessary to write this to the Corinthians? See that Timothy has nothing to fear. Talk to your neighbor. Okay, what do you think? Okay, so Timothy was a young man. Not only was he a young man, he was young in the faith. Um, Anything else? Okay, okay. So here's a young man coming amongst them, and they're used to dealing with Paul and Apollos and Cephas. So here's this young whippersnapper. And are they going to dismiss him because of his age and because of his perceived lack of maturity in the faith? Yeah, yeah, exactly. So um, Ellicott's commentary for English uh, readers points out that Timothy and Erastus, who's also involved here, had been sent by Paul to reinforce the teaching to the Corinthians. Since they would travel through Macedonia, visiting various congregations to prepare them for Paul's intended upcoming visit, the letter would likely reach them before they actual arrival. That what Paul had written. So in 1 Corinthians 4 and 17, and what does that say, by the way? All right, thank you. And so, as I said, Ellicott's commentary says the apostle was evidently anxious to know how Timothy would be received by the Corinthians. He was young in years. He was young also in the faith. He had probably was constitutionally weak and timid nature, and we don't have time to look that up right now. But what does it say that about? What does Paul say about Timothy? Well, we can look it up. Nope, that's not. physically not the strongest person. If I'm delayed, you will know how people ought to conduct themselves in God's household, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and foundation of the truth. Recalling your tears, I long to see you, so that I may be filled with joy. And he was, of course, officially very subordinate to St. Paul, that is, Timothy. In a church, therefore, some of those members had gone so far as to question, if not actually to repudiate the authority, even of the apostle himself, as Drew pointed out, and to deprecate him as compared with the elder apostles. There was considerable danger for one like Timothy. By reminding the Corinthians of the work in which Timothy is engaged and of its identity with his own work, the apostle anticipates and protests against any insult being offered to Timothy because of what a great English statesman once called, in reference to himself, the atrocious crime of being a young man. And I intended to look up that quote, but I'm pretty sure that you can guess the individual that made that quote was Winston Churchill. Yeah, that's something that sounds like something that Churchill would say. I remember